So after a week-long break, Fujimoto finally blesses us with some more Denji action. And although it's not as action-packed as Chapter 102, Chapter 103 definitely gives us some more insight into how Denji has grown as a character since we last saw him in Part 1. So the chapter starts off shortly after Denji defeats the Cockroach Devil, as we see it being announced on the news that Denji fought the Cockroach Devil and even saved a cat. And we cut to this news reporter that is taking to the streets to basically get a feel for people's opinions on Chainsaw Man. And we see her interview all sorts of people that have many varying opinions on him, from people that flat out don't like him and think that he's some kind of menace to society that needs to be gotten rid of, and those who absolutely adore him and think of him as like a superhero or something. Now, after several people are interviewed, the last person that's interviewed is actually Denji himself, who basically goes on to dap himself up, saying that everybody at his school loves Chainsaw Man, and even goes as far as to try to give out what he thinks is Chainsaw Man's number, which of course is his actual number. And I absolutely love this because this is like the most Denji response that he could possibly give, but he's quickly cut off by the cameraman saying that he's talking too much and he can't just hand out his number on live TV, and they're gonna go ahead and cut out that part. So we then see that the news reporter that was questioning people is still right by Denji and closes out her segment by asking people to give one final cheer to Chainsaw Man. And we then see the crowd of people around her start to chant Chainsaw Man's name, and we see that Denji's looking on from behind the camera and just observing all this happen. And I just think it's so funny that in the next panel, we see him with his hands on his hips and his chest out, just feeling so proud of himself, like some kind of superhero in disguise. But this is quickly cut off by Yoshida, who approaches him and says hi, but Denji claims to not know who he is. And after Yoshida specifies that he met him during the International Assassins incident, Denji weirdly claims that never happened, which to me just kind of gives me an indication that Denji's kind of suppressing some of the things that happened in his past that made him feel trapped and made him feel like some kind of useless item, because that was a really big theme in Part 1. And now that Denji has all this freedom and is like a hero and has his brand new life, it would make sense that he's trying to kind of suppress a lot of that. But going back to Yoshida, he insists that they stop at this cafe to continue their conversation, to which Denji claims that he's broke, and Yoshida insists that it's his treat. So we then move to the cafe where they begin to order food, and of course Denji, being like the wild animal that he is, orders all these random foods like spaghetti, orange juice, an entire cake, and custard pudding. So as they continue their conversation, Yoshida tries to play it off like it's such a coincidence that him and Denji ran into each other. But then Denji notices that they're wearing the same school uniform and asks him if he's been stalking him, to which Yoshida responds by saying that he's technically not wrong by assuming that, and elaborates by saying that he's part of this secret organization that isn't evil in any way, but just wants to keep an eye on him and prevent him from transforming into the Chainsaw Man anymore for his own safety. Because apparently if his identity is revealed, then very bad things will happen. So Denji goes on to question him what would happen if he was found out, to which Yoshida claims that if he lets his identity be known, then he won't let him eat the cake or any of the food that he just ordered, and takes all the utensils away. But Denji, being the savage that he is, just cuts the cake with his hand and starts eating it. He is quite literally trying to have his cake and eat it too, which of course is a famous saying because that is quite literally impossible. You can't eat a cake and retain that actual cake in front of you, you know? This is why Yoshida says that if he lets his identity be known, then the good life that he's obtained will be taken away from him. And he goes on to question him as to why he's even saving people and killing devils in the first place, because he's not getting paid for it and he doesn't come off as an altruist to him. So he's kind of confused as to why he's even doing this in the first place. And I know I've said this a couple times in this video already, but Denji gives the absolute most Denji answer that he could possibly give by saying that he's doing this because he wants people to find out his identity. And Yoshida's obviously just kind of baffled by this and asks why. And Denji responds by saying, because once my secret's out, the ladies will be all over me. And Yoshida is quite literally at a loss for words at this. And we end the chapter with a view of both of them sitting next to all these framed pictures on the wall with the most prevalent one being an empty bird cage. And we know that Fujimoto fits a lot of symbolism into his chapters, so I don't think it's a coincidence that this caged bird is put on such center stage for this panel. And in my opinion, it represents the new life that Denji has, no longer being a caged bird, no longer being this character that is so easily influenced by others and dragged along by the plot of the story like he was for most of part 1. Denji, for the entirety of part 1, was basically this lowly person that had no one that really cared about him and was only really used for his heart or people that wanted to obtain his heart. Everyone around him that he thought loved him or cared about him were either dead or didn't really give a damn about him and just wanted him for his heart. And I think Fujimoto's been building up this sense of freedom and sense of newfound independence for Denji, because in chapter 102, when Asa is debating killing Yuko, she thinks back to the moment where her mother first died, where they were running away from the Typhoon Devil, and as they're running, Asa notices this injured cat on the street and attempts to pick her up. She then falls like she claims that she does at every pivotal moment in her life, and because of this, her mother sacrifices herself to save Asa, leaving Asa to believe that it's her fault that her mother was killed. And this obviously devastates her, but then she starts thinking about when she met Yuko and she attempts to give her her shoes. And even though Asa was kind of reluctant to this, Yuko responds back by saying, even if my actions turn out to be a mistake, if my heart was in the right place, that's all that matters to me. So when it cuts back to the present time and Asa's running with Yuko in her hands, she proclaims that she wants to live like that too. She knows that her actions got her mom killed, but her heart was in the right place. So as she claimed in the first chapter of part 2, she wants to live selfishly and do the things that she feels is right for herself. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we also see Denji saving a cat later in the chapter, while at the same time sacrificing the lives of a promising young man and a car full of old people to do so. This is stating that Denji is living life how he wants to, no longer living by the whims of others, no longer letting others control his actions, much like the cockroach devil was trying to do by trying to make him decide who he wanted to save. Denji said screw that and decided to save the cat because that's what he wanted, and he's living the life that Asa is striving for. So circling back to this framed picture of an empty cage, I think Fujimoto has been building up the idea that Denji is now more free than he's ever been before and is living his life without regrets. And I just absolutely love that for him. I'm glad to see it. I'm really hoping that we see more of Denji's life in the next chapter, like where he's living, how him and Nayuta are doing, because he is still supposed to be looking after her, and how his search for power or the next blood devil is doing. But then again, we might just cut right back to Asa, who seems to be our protagonist of part 2 in a way, which I'm totally fine with. I know we're going to be seeing more of Denji eventually, and Asa is definitely a very interesting character to me, so I do want to see what happens with her as the story goes along. But what do you guys think about this chapter? What do you think this is setting up? Do you guys have that lingering feeling that things are about to blow up in our faces like they really tend to do in a lot of Fujimoto's arcs? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let me know if the framed bird cage indicated some kind of symbolism to you, or if anything else in the chapter kind of stuck out to you guys. I'm very curious to know. But until next time, I'll see you guys later.